This is a full story. Kitten wishes you all a happy and enjoyable story. In the second year after marrying CEO Hailey, I studied psychology and mind reading for 2 months. Who would have thought that upon waking up, oh no, my head hurts so much. I suddenly began to hear what others were thinking. The aloof CEO Hailey was applying body lotion in front of me. Although we are legally married now, her gaze was cold, but internally, she was plotting how to win me over. Oh dear, did you see me, hubby? If you don't take the initiative, I might actually get dressed. Really dressed? She slowly put on her clothes and sat in front of the computer, searching how to make my husband take the initiative. I was dumbfounded. Ever since I got mind-reading abilities, I began to doubt if this was still the same aloof Ice Queen CEO. Although Hailey appears to be a high-cold Ice Queen on the outside, her inner world is so flamboyant. I stood not far from Hailey, watching her frown at the computer screen. To anyone who didn't know, it would seem like she was handling some serious work. Who would have thought that a high-cold glacier-like CEO would actually turn to the internet for advice on how to make her new husband take the initiative? That's quite absurd. Quite absurd indeed. I couldn't help but sigh and tentatively called out to her, "Hailey, oh dear, why is my husband using my full name? We're married now. Why is he still so distant?" Faster than her lips was her inner voice, and Hailey turned to look at me with a cold expression. "What's the matter?" I chuckled internally. To be honest, I wasn't used to this contrast at all. "Well, should we go to bed?" I pointed to the bed and asked her cautiously. "After all, today is our wedding night. No matter how flamboyant she is, we have to go through the motions. My husband wants to sleep with me. Is he also moved by me?" Indeed, wearing silk pajamas and applying body lotion really works. "Remember to give the assistant an extra leg of chicken tomorrow." Hailey nodded with reserved indifference and gave a brief nasal sound. I shivered. Looking at her indifferent face, I kept imagining her letting loose. On one side was the emotionless family marriage. On the other was the silly and cute wife's daily romantic life. It all felt somewhat disjointed. Sighing, I lay down on the bed, preparing to sleep. Oh dear, my husband wants to sleep with me. I'm so happy. After waiting for over 10 years, I finally married my husband. Ha ha ha. Hearing this inner voice, I suddenly opened my eyes and stared incredulously at Hailey, who was preparing to lie down. My stare made her face seem a bit off. "Why are you staring at me instead of sleeping?" Her brows furrowed slightly, and her expression seemed somewhat anxious. If her inner voice hadn't been so loud that it gave me a headache, I would have thought she really disliked me. I used to think she hated arranged marriages, but now it seems it's a bit different from what I imagined. As the saying goes, marriage is a big deal, arranged by parents and matchmakers, and that's exactly how it was with Hailey and me. My dad and her dad were comrades in their youth. It is said that Hailey's dad almost died on the battlefield while saving my dad. Unable to repay the life-saving grace, the only way now is to repay it with his daughter. So, half a month ago, I had a whirlwind marriage with CEO Hailey. In my heart, I always felt she was somewhat unwilling, but Hailey completely meets my criteria for a partner, especially her face, which is as beautiful as a fairy. Walking down the street, she turns heads everywhere. Before the wedding, my dad worried I might refuse and did some convincing. "When you were little, you two played in the mud every day. Once, while playing house, Hailey called you husband in front of everyone, and you shyly buried your head in the sofa." I suddenly remembered a time in elementary school when I had done poorly on a midterm exam. Afraid of being scolded when I got home, I sat by the roadside, starving and too scared to go back. At that time, she was wearing a white dress, looking as elegant as a princess from a fairy tale. She gave me a lollipop and talked to me for a long time, comforting me. That day has always been etched in my memory. But when I saw Hailey again, she always seemed too aloof. Nothing like the easygoing person from childhood. Until high school, when her family moved near mine. That year, she was preparing to study abroad while I was taking my middle school entrance exams. By high school, I learned she was the school beauty and a top student for 3 years, practically a legendary figure. Perhaps influenced by Hailey, I worked hard during high school and got into the same university as her. But just as I started my freshman year, she was getting ready to go abroad for further studies. Before leaving, she even caught our class monitor confessing to me. That day, she pulled me aside and seriously analyzed 300 reasons why dating would affect my studies. However, looking back now, something always felt off. Hailey's voice pulled me back from my drifting thoughts. "My husband has been staring at me like this. Could it be that he wants to do something? Oh dear, why do I feel a bit excited? I'm so nervous." My mind subconsciously thought that if my wife thought this way, maybe she wanted me to do something. Oh dear, suddenly I feel restless. So excited. Why do I feel like my mind is all over the place? place. I felt a bit embarrassed and amused, seeing Hailey hiding her head under the blanket. I couldn't shake the feeling that she had wanted to seduce me from a young age. A mischievous thought crossed my mind, and I decided to tease this playful woman. So, I propped myself up on the bed and leaned slightly towards Hailey. I heard her excited inner voice spinning in circles. Oh dear, my husband is getting closer and closer. Could he be thinking of kissing me? I am so shy. Should I move a bit closer to him? PFF, is this ice-cold CEO really so lovesick? Just a slight movement from me, and she's already strategizing on her own? A smile appeared on my face. Amused and a bit exasperated, I directly asked, "Do you want a kiss?" In an instant, I saw Hailey's face freeze, her cheeks turning bright red. Her eyes were filled with astonishment, as if I had guessed her thoughts correctly. Seeing her remain motionless and her inner voice disappearing, I began to doubt, was she just all talk? After a moment of hesitation, I was about to turn away when she suddenly grabbed my arm, and a flush of red spread rapidly across her face. Seeing this, I felt a pang of confusion. "You didn't agree when I asked, but now you're stopping me from leaving. What exactly are you thinking?" The warmth between her eyes gradually increased, and the pink on her face extended to her ears. A voice as faint as a whisper emerged. It suddenly felt a bit unreal. Did she just make a sound? Seeing that I didn't react, Hailey, still blushing, raised her voice slightly. Yes. She lifted her eyes, her sparkling gaze fixed directly on me, making me a bit flustered. Oh no, I was just speaking idly, and now Hailey seems to be taking it seriously? I felt like I was back in childhood, when Hailey called me husband in front of everyone, and now my mind was in a tangled mess, unsure how to handle this. Under Hailey's sparkling gaze, I couldn't help but nervously swallow. The next moment, Hailey's puzzled inner voice came through again. "Why isn't my husband moving yet?" I already said it quite loudly. "Hurry up, husband. I can't wait any longer." Don't be fooled by someone who seems as steady as a mountain on the surface. In reality, they're burning with passion inside. And don't be misled by someone who appears to be provocative. They're actually quite nervous. Seeing Hailey's expression start to show contempt, I made up my mind. I covered Hailey's eyes with my hand and lightly kissed her lips. Hailey's body tensed up. Grinning, I felt a bit mischievous, turned around, and pulled the blanket over myself to sleep. Ha ha ha, daring to look down on your husband. Lying on my side, I was savoring the jelly-like feeling. Behind me, I heard Hailey's sigh. Why did he only give me a peck? Don't people usually say 3 hours? Is it because I wasn't proactive enough? Or am I not fragrant enough today? PFF, I couldn't help but nearly burst into laughter, burying my head in the blanket and giggling. How can this ice-cold CEO be so adorable? Perhaps due to the exhaustion from the wedding ceremony earlier, I closed my eyes and didn't want to open them again. Just as I was drifting off, I heard Hailey's voice again. Is my husband asleep? Oh no, he doesn't seem to be holding me. Maybe I should quietly move into his arms. He probably won't notice. The ice-cold CEO husband is really quite the dramatic character. I rolled my eyes in exasperation, but was too sleepy to do anything. Half asleep, I suddenly felt something soft added to my embrace. The next morning, when I woke up the first thing I saw was Hailey's delicate face. We were lying very close, so close that I could touch Hailey's lips with just a slight lift of my head. Her long eyelashes fluttered slightly, her petite nose moving with her breath, and her face was rosy like an apple. My wife is really beautiful. Should I sneak in a kiss? As I was about to lean in, Hailey's eyelashes suddenly fluttered. Hee. My husband didn't push me away last night. Being in my husband's arms is so comfortable. I need to be quiet. I can't let my husband know I'm awake. Is this silly girl still pretending? I darkened my expression, pulling my arm out of Hailey's embrace, causing her to stare at me in confusion. Her expression gradually began to resemble someone just waking up. Ha ha ha. I couldn't stop laughing. Even though she was caught red-handed, she still tried to act like she had just woken up. I maintained a straight face, trying to stifle my laughter. Hailey began to regain her aloof CEO demeanor, casting a nonchalant glance at me before turning to get a sanitary pad. The contrast from last night was simply stark. I couldn't help but smile. Just last night she wanted kisses and hugs. Within 3 seconds, I heard Hailey's distressed inner voice again. Why isn't my husband hugging me anymore? Is it because I'm not as pretty when I just woke up? Does my husband dislike me now? There might be some sleep crust on my eyes, but I can't control that. I couldn't hold back my laughter, nearly bursting into a fit. I collapsed on the bed, laughing uncontrollably. When Hailey came out, my face was completely neutral. As I walked into the bathroom, I turned and said, "Excuse me." Hailey's expression changed to confusion, then helplessness, followed by panic, and finally, a very unattractive look. Her expression changed as if it were a running marquee. Ha ha ha. I laughed inwardly, letting her act aloof in front of her husband. Before I could even turn on the faucet, I heard Hailey's inner voice again. Why is my husband still so distant? Does he not love me anymore? I don't want to sleep with my stinky husband tonight. My face stiffened. It seemed I had played too many tricks. After breakfast, we went to our respective offices. While putting on my shoes, I glanced at Hailey standing beside me and heard her inner turmoil. I want to stay with my husband a little longer, but how should I offer to send him to work? My husband is almost done with his shoes. I need to come up with a good excuse before then. I deliberately slowed my movements to see how long Hailey could hold out, but she really was quite reserved. She watched me tie my shoelaces for 5 minutes and was anxious the entire time, yet she didn't say a word. Well, I wasn't expecting much. I'm leaving. I grabbed my bag and turned to walk away, while Hailey followed behind, her inner thoughts still chattering away. If that day ever came, I'd really want to give Hailey an award. Master of empty talk. Drama queen. After arriving at the company, the supervisor immediately assigned me to manage a new project. Though they said it was a significant responsibility, it was clear to me that no one wanted to handle this hot potato, so it landed on my lap. I didn't have high expectations until I saw the name of the company on the document. Oh, look at that. It's Hailey's company. Technically, it's also my company since it's our joint asset. Facing my colleagues' consolations, I put on a troubled expression. I won't let the company down, but I can only do my best. Though I acted troubled, I was secretly thrilled. After organizing the documents, I took a cab to Hailey's company. While waiting at the reception, I overheard them gossiping about Hailey. What kind of man does President Hailey like? I'm really curious. Shouldn't her ideal type be a charming, muscular guy? A charming, muscular guy? I glanced at my casual outfit and fell into contemplation. Why should it matter what type of man she likes? She wouldn't look at us anyway. But you never know. Those TV dramas are so romantic about bosses and their subordinates. Maybe something like that could actually happen to us. Nice thoughts, but reality is harsh. Hailey is already married. She's my wife. I waited in the lobby for about 15 minutes, and for 14 of those minutes, I listened to various discussions about Hailey. Seems like I should keep an eye on my rivals. While I was lost in thought, Hailey's assistant came downstairs. The assistant, dressed in a black suit, led me to the meeting area. Just as I was about to enter the room, I saw Hailey walking out of another meeting room. It looked like she had just finished a meeting. Just when I thought Hailey would walk past me, she walked straight towards me. Do you need something? Before I could comment on her frosty expression, I heard her inner voice loudly cheering. Oh my, did my husband come to see me on purpose? I'm so touched. Indeed, only my husband treats me the best. So the aloof CEO is a love-struck fool. I cleared my throat, looked at Hailey's expressionless face, and tried to suppress my laughter. I'm here on behalf of our company, regarding the previous project. In the next moment, I heard her joy crash down. My husband isn't visiting me for work, right? If so, someone else could have come. Indeed, a love-struck fool is scary, but a love-struck fool who self-deprecates is even worse. Hailey seemed to have other matters to attend to and left under the assistant's urging. I soon met the project liaison and resumed the negotiation between the two companies. Strangely enough, today's negotiation went very smoothly. I didn't experience any of the difficulties my colleagues had mentioned. I didn't dwell on it, hoping just to wrap up the project quickly. As the discussion concluded and everyone was chatting, I suddenly heard a familiar inner voice. Why is my husband smiling so happily? Let me see who he's with. The sudden voice startled me. Is this what they mean by hearing someone before seeing them? The next second, the door to the meeting room was knocked open. Hailey. The project manager's smile vanished instantly, and he stood up to look at Hailey. I wondered, is Hailey really that intimidating? Turning around, I met her cool and exquisite face. Okay, she does look intimidating when she's not smiling, but it's just a facade. Inside, she's all bluster. Continue your discussion as if I'm not here. Hailey then sat beside us. I was indifferent, but the project manager was visibly nervous. How come you were so cheerful behind my back, but now you can't say a word? Linhao, why are you chatting and laughing with other women instead of focusing on work? Hailey's inner voice was a splendid roast. I felt a bit uneasy listening to it. The meeting room was deathly silent. I watched the project manager wipe his sweat, his lips tightly pressed. Since the project details have been settled, I won't take up any more of your time. I broke the silence, stood up with the documents, and prepared to leave. The project manager also stood up. Then let's look forward to a pleasant cooperation. Since you're free tonight, Mr. Lin, would you like to have dinner together? Seeing her pause and glance at Hailey, I assumed she was speaking out of courtesy. Hailey remained unflustered, but her inner monologue came again. Dinner? What kind of dinner? You barely know him, and you're already inviting him to dinner. Does this woman not have a husband? Why is she eyeing my treasure? I was startled by the sudden treasure comment and nearly stumbled. Fortunately, Hailey quickly reached out to steady me. Are you okay? Her cool and soft voice was in my ear, and I grinned. I'm fine. To avoid any awkwardness, I stood straight and kept my distance from her. Sure enough, Hailey's inner voice was filled with grievance. Why did my husband push my hand away? Does he not like me anymore? I was at a loss for words. How did this become a problem? After the project manager was dismissed by Hailey, we headed downstairs together. People around us cast many curious glances. Their gossiping eyes were unmistakable. I silently sighed in my heart. Luckily, Hailey and I don't work at the same company, or I can only imagine the rumors that would swirl about me. However, Hailey seemed to revel in the attention. My husband really does bring me prestige. They must think we're a perfect match. My husband is the most handsome and perfectly suited man for me. I have to admit, being praised as the most handsome and perfect match did make me feel quite satisfied. Having such a beautiful wife by my side certainly makes me look good. As we left the company, I noticed that Hailey didn't seem to be heading back. I thought she might want to see me off. Great. When the taxi arrived, I opened the door and sat inside, but before I could say anything, Hailey followed in. What's going on? Is she going to send me back to the company? That would be too much. What are you doing? I couldn't help but ask, only to receive Hailey's calm response. Aren't we going to have dinner? Despite her outward coldness, her inner warmth was undeniable. I raised an eyebrow and held back a laugh. Yes, dinner. Since Hailey is paying, I won't pass up the opportunity. At the restaurant, Hailey handed me the menu. I glanced at the prices and nearly dropped my eyes to the floor. The restaurant looked shabby from the outside, but the dishes cost hundreds each. I looked at Hailey's indifferent demeanor. Guess I won't be shy. While ordering, Hailey even added several signature dishes. She said with a cool expression, "These dishes are quite good. You should try them." But internally, she was feeling, why did my husband only order a few dishes? He's been so busy with the wedding, and now he's lost weight. It breaks my heart. My husband's six-pack abs have become smaller. He must eat more. My handsome husband shouldn't go hungry. Even if she truly cared, she didn't need to order so many dishes. But it turned out Hailey's taste was spot on. Although the restaurant looked unremarkable, the food was delicious. I ate until I was stuffed and needed to lean on the wall to walk. After dinner, I said goodbye to Hailey and returned to my company. When everyone saw that I had successfully secured the project, they asked if I had any special tips. I just smiled and said nothing. What special trick could there be? If I had to explain, it might involve recounting how my father was rescued by Hailey's father on the battlefield. The supervisor was very pleased with my work. While he painted a rosy picture of my future, he also booked a flight for me. It was a new business trip project, and it was even more challenging. This must be the shooting star effect. I am truly grateful, but what can I do? I had to force a smile and accept the project. That evening, while packing my things at home, I happened to see Hailey coming back from working overtime. She stood at the door of the room, and I could almost feel the tremor in her eyes. Is my husband going back to his parents' home? What's going on? Did my husband not like the food I ordered? What did I do wrong? What should I do? I paused in my actions of packing clothes into the suitcase. I glanced at Hailey, who was clearly overthinking. Seeing her eyes glistening with unshed tears and looking pitiful, I felt a bit reluctant. So, I cleared my throat, straightened up, and looked at her. Well, there's a last-minute project at our company, and the timeline is tight, so I came back to pack my things. To prevent Hailey from overthinking, I decided to explain. Hailey's face visibly relaxed. She responded faintly, but inside, she was celebrating. Haha, my husband isn't going back to his parents' home. He's still mine. I'm so happy. But what kind of company is my husband working for? Why are they sending him on a business trip so casually? What if there's some creepy female boss trying to get him to her room in the middle of the night? Her imagination is truly boundless. Seeing Hailey looking worried and upset, I realized she was genuinely concerned about me. As her husband, I decided to comfort her. Don't worry, I'll come back as soon as the project is finished. I'm the only one going, and the person I'll be negotiating with is a man. There's no danger. I softened my tone, reaching out to gently touch Hailey's little finger. Hailey's face remained cold, but her heart was already beaming. You think I don't know? I've got you all figured out. Seeing me so accommodating, Hailey even started to push her luck. You need to call me every day to check in. I nodded. Okay. This must be Hailey's real goal. After all, this clingy love-struck brain is the type that cries if she doesn't see her husband for 10 minutes. Seeing me agree without saying much else, Hailey looked at me sideways, trying to sneak a glance. She got caught right in the act. I almost laughed. We're already married. Why would you need to sneak a look? I turned my gaze and said, you can call me too. I gave her never a way out. There are clearly that Hailey's expression brightened even more. The next morning, Hailey personally drove me to the airport. As she drove, her gaze was fixed ahead, and she seemed calm, but internally, she was worrying non-stop. Will my husband be safe traveling alone? Should I go with him? But would he think I'm being too controlling? I silently commented, not really. Ugh, we're about to be apart, and I'm already missing him. What should I do? I feel like I miss him already. I was a bit anxious. Then why don't you come with me? Stop just imagining things. Take some action. However, even after we got out of the car, Hailey maintained her aloof and cool demeanor. I thought, you're so noble and impressive. It serves you right that you're going to miss your husband for the next few days. Feeling a bit miffed, I dragged my suitcase and turned to leave, but Hailey called out to me. For a moment, I was pleasantly surprised. But the girl just reminded me, be safe. Her tone and expression were as stern as a homeroom teacher. My dad never talked to me so seriously. Well, who told me to choose this wife? That night, after checking into the hotel, I called Hailey to reassure her. Across the line, she asked a few more questions than usual. How's the hotel? Is the project going smoothly? If you encounter any problems, let me know. I chuckled softly. You're concerned about me, aren't you? She was pretending to be calm at the airport, but just a few hours later, she couldn't help herself. Hailey admitted quietly, maybe because of the distance, I couldn't hear her inner thoughts, so I didn't know what she was really thinking. But that was okay. After spending some time chatting, I reminded her to eat on time and promised I'd be back soon. Hailey agreed. We fell into a comfortable silence, and she didn't hang up. We just listened to each other's soft breathing. At that moment, there was a knock on my hotel room door. A female colleague's voice came from outside. Lynn Howe, want to go out for dinner? Coming. I answered and said a few more words to Hailey before ending the call. I didn't think much of it, grabbed my jacket and went out. Originally, the business trip was supposed to be a solo affair, but the supervisor, concerned I might struggle alone, sent a female colleague to accompany me. It happened suddenly, and I wasn't informed in advance. I only met her at the airport check-in. Since it was a minor detail, I didn't think it was necessary to explain it to Hailey. But that evening, Hailey's call came as usual. On the other end of the line, she took a long time to speak. What were you doing just now? Eating dinner. Alone? No, with a colleague. Didn't you say you were going alone? From this exchange, I understood that Hailey was probably more concerned about the female colleague. Her roundabout questioning was too clumsy, so I directly addressed her underlying concern. She was also sent out on short notice. She's my subordinate, and by the way, she's already married. I gave all the details to my aloof and cold boss wife. On the other end of the line, Hailey paused briefly, just asking. Even though her voice was calm, I found it amusing. I teased her. I thought you might be jealous. I could clearly hear Hailey's breath become a bit erratic. She didn't respond, and I couldn't tell if she was angry or just speechless. Seeing the time, though it was still early, I figured it wasn't helpful to keep the call strained. I tentatively asked, if there's nothing else, should I hang up? I wondered, is she really okay with ending the call so readily? It seems like she's not in a hurry. By the time I finished my 3-day business trip, I was ready for a bit of playful teasing. Before leaving, I told Hailey the trip would be 3 days, but I knew she expected me back sooner. So when I called her in the morning, I casually mentioned the trip's been extended to 5 days. It depends on the situation. Her response was surprisingly subdued, with no extra questions. From her voice, I could tell she was genuinely upset. I decided to tease her a bit. Wife, we haven't seen each other for 3 days. I really miss you. The line went silent except for Hailey's slightly erratic breathing. Anyway, it's getting late. You should get some rest. I'll hang up now. I put my phone down on the nightstand, jumped into bed, and laughed under the covers. I could just picture Hailey's expression right now. The next morning, I was jolted awake by a knock on the door. Thinking it was my colleague inviting me for breakfast, I hurriedly put on a jacket and headed to open the door. To my astonishment, it was Hailey standing outside in a stunning white dress, looking both ethereal and beautiful. I stared in disbelief. Was she using teleportation? Hailey's eyes, full of longing, locked onto mine as she took a step forward. What did you mean by what you said last night? Still half asleep, my brain was running on slow mode. What did I say? I could clearly hear Hailey's thoughts. Husband, you said you missed me. Don't tell me you forgot. Well, I'm here now. He can't just send me away, right? I struggled to contain my laughter. Is this really the high cold boss Hailey everyone talks about? I walked up to her and wrapped her in a hug. Do you miss me? Hailey didn't say anything, but her excitement was palpable. I do. I missed you so much. Her internal voice was almost deafening. I playfully bit my lip, pretending not to hear her thoughts, and said, if you don't miss me, then I don't miss you either. I pulled away and turned to go back inside. Hailey quickly grabbed my arm. She nodded. I missed you. I bent down and kissed her softly on the lips. Here's a reward. word. Hailey's heart practically soared. My husband kissed me. All the rush and trouble were worth it. However, it didn't completely immerse myself in the sweet moments with Hailey. I changed my clothes, left her waiting in the room, and then went out to handle work. The project was almost finalized already. Today, signing the contract meant everything would be settled. To celebrate, the client invited us to dinner. Since the client initiated the invitation, it would be rude for me and my female colleague to refuse. However, once we were at the table, some alcohol was inevitable. Although I kept it moderate, I still ended up feeling a bit tipsy. In the hallway, I happened to run into Hailey, who had come to pick me up. Without caring that there were people behind us, she directly looped her arm through mine. Why is my husband drinking like this? He looks so charming right now. Should I take advantage of this situation? Me? I was drunk, but not to the point of losing my senses. Cool and aloof CEO. You should hold back on those little schemes. I tilted my head to look at Hailey, my fingers wandering over her collarbone, clearly teasing her. Hailey's eyes were slightly red, and the warmth of her palm seemed to burn my skin. Once we were in the hotel room, I couldn't hold back anymore. I pinned her against the door and kissed her. Not pretending now. I took a moment to catch my breath. Hailey looked a bit stunned, leaning back slightly, her gaze showing some confusion. My hand rested on her heart, watching the lipstick smeared at the corner of her mouth. I've always been able to hear your thoughts. In that instant, I saw confusion in Hailey's eyes. Her heart was racing, clearly feeling guilty. I brushed her shoulder and walked into the room, taking off my jacket. Turning around, Hailey was still standing there, stunned. Has my husband always been able to hear my thoughts? Is that true? How embarrassing. Will he be angry? No, I can't think about it anymore. How can someone be so cute? I really like her. I called Hailey over, seeing her stand there like a well-behaved little koala. I pulled at the corner of her clothing and asked directly, "Do you like me?" I stared at Hailey without hesitation. Since she's my wife, there's nothing to be afraid of. If you can't say it, then forget it. Seeing her hesitate, I loosened my tie. Like, she replied firmly. Okay, a moment of boastful pleasure, and the next morning. I need to go home and let my mom give me a good replenishment. Hailey slept until noon, proving how hard I worked last night. That gave me a sense of accomplishment. On the plane, Hailey kept holding my hand without letting go, causing the flight attendants to glance over at us repeatedly. I felt a bit embarrassed from being stared at and turned to see Hailey pretending to sleep with her eyes closed. I wanted to pull my hand out while she was asleep, but as soon as I moved, she tightened her grip. Little lady, pretending to sleep with me here? I even suspected that after Hailey learned I could hear her thoughts, she was now deliberately controlling her mental activity to keep me from eavesdropping. But it didn't matter. I already knew her feelings. Once we were home, Hailey cooked for me. Seeing her in a pink pig apron, skillfully chopping vegetables, I was even more surprised. In my memory, Hailey didn't seem to know how to cook. Noticing my confusion, Hailey smiled lightly. I knew you had a craving for food, so I specially learned to cook for you. When did this happen? I was surprised. It couldn't have been during my business trip, could it? Given Hailey's skilled movements, she must have learned for at least a few months. Hailey turned down the heat on the stove, then walked over to me. Lin Hao. It was the first time she called my name so seriously, causing my heart to skip a beat. Actually, I've liked you for a long time. Didn't you say you could hear my thoughts? Then you should be able to feel my feelings for you. It's just that whenever we met before, you hardly spoke to me. I thought you disliked me, so I never dared to express my feelings. Until we met through our parents' matchmaking, I thought you wouldn't agree to marry me. I really regret not being with you earlier. She took my hand and gazed at me with deep affection. How about you? Do you like me too? I shook my head. At that moment, I saw Hailey's expression change drastically. Just as her heart was about to feel aggrieved, I stepped forward and hugged her, more than just liking. With my cheek against her chest, feeling her strong heartbeat, I couldn't help but smile. Are you so happy? Hailey hugged me back, stood on tiptoe, and kissed the corner of my lips. Don't you already know if I'm happy? Yes, I know. Wait a minute. I closed my eyes and focused. It seemed I really couldn't hear Hailey's thoughts anymore. As for when this started, I couldn't remember. But what does it matter? We both understand each other now. I couldn't help but ask Hailey, so, when did you start liking me? Hailey shook her head. I don't remember clearly. Maybe it was from the lollipop incident? I looked at her and suddenly laughed. So that's when you started liking me. I hugged Hailey. Wife, I feel the same. I smiled without speaking, looking further back in time. When Hailey called me husband in front of everyone, it meant my life was destined to be with Hailey. Wow, I didn't expect that Lin Hao would be so fortunate in this lifetime, marrying a cool and aloof female CEO. Such great fortune, I'll cherish it for the rest of my life. The story ends.